My mom lit the candles while my dad poured the champagne. It was a small family gathering in our living room, balloons taped lazily to the walls, a homemade cake sitting on the counter, and Maya standing in the center like she always did, smiling with her whole face as if the world rotated around her. It wasn't her birthday, but you wouldn't know that by how everyone hovered around her, waiting for her to speak. I stood near the back, holding my paper plate like it might shield me from the emotional sting I knew was coming. "I have an announcement," Maya said, flipping her hair like she practiced it. "I'm launching a mental health app." My stomach twisted. I blinked. I told her about the idea for that app weeks ago, during one of those late-night kitchen talks when I thought we were just bonding, when I thought she was listening because she cared. "I've been working on the concept for a while," she continued, looking directly at our parents. "And I'm calling it LightMind. It's focused on personalized AI therapy tools, things people can use daily without needing an appointment." My chest tightened. LightMind. My name. My exact name. I had scribbled it on a notebook for weeks, dreaming about the launch, thinking through color palettes, sketching rough interfaces. It wasn't just a name. It was my story, my sleepless nights, my quiet confidence finally trying to break through. I looked at my mother. She gasped and clapped her hands together like she'd just seen her daughter win the Nobel Prize. "Oh, Maya, that's incredible," she said. "You've always had the brains for business." My dad nodded, pride radiating off him like heat. "You're finally using that degree for something real, brilliant, sweetheart." I opened my mouth, but no sound came out. I wanted to speak up, to say, "That's mine." I wanted to pull out the folder on my laptop where I'd stored months of drafts, research, and design. I wanted to tell them how excited I had been, how I had stayed up building algorithms that actually worked, but I knew how it would go. They'd say I was overreacting. They'd say I was being dramatic again. And worst of all, they'd believe her over me. They always did. Maya looked at me just once. It was brief. A flick of the eyes. A dare. And I took it the only way I could. I walked away. I left my cake untouched, my plate barely held together in my shaking hands. I walked past the kitchen, through the hallway, and stepped outside. The night air was cold, but it felt better than the suffocating warmth inside. Behind me, laughter erupted again. My mom asked when Maya would launch. My dad offered to help with contacts. My little cousin shouted that she wanted to help design the logo. No one noticed I was gone. I leaned against the railing of the porch and let the silence of the neighborhood try to calm me. My fists clenched at my sides, not out of anger, at least not fully. It was heartbreak, raw, real heartbreak. It wasn't just about the app. It was about trust, about betrayal, about being the quiet sister who finally had something worth celebrating, only to watch it be taken and re-gifted to someone the family already worshipped. I had always known I wasn't their favorite, but I didn't think she'd take this. She didn't just steal my idea, she stole my voice, and they clapped for it. To understand why it shattered me, you'd have to know how much I poured into that idea and how long I'd been invisible in my own family. I wasn't the type who spoke loudly or demanded attention. That was always Maya's thing. From kindergarten plays to college internships, she was the spotlight magnet. I was the shadow, the girl who fixed the printer when it jammed, who helped her rehearse presentations she'd win awards for, the girl who never made the holiday newsletter. I never minded, at least, not at first. I didn't need applause. I just wanted respect. When I was 21 during my last year at Stanford, I started developing symptoms of burnout, silent anxiety, a creeping exhaustion that made it hard to eat or sleep. I tried therapy, but the wait lists were long, the sessions expensive, and honestly, most apps out there felt either too generic or too cold. I wanted something that could meet people where they were, something affordable, intuitive, and emotionally intelligent. That's when the idea for LightMind was born. It wasn't some get-rich-quick scheme. It came from experience. I started sketching wireframes in my notebooks between lectures, watching YouTube videos on machine learning, tinkering with GPT APIs during winter break when everyone else was out partying. I even got a freelance job doing back-end development for a wellness startup. Not for the money, but so I could understand how data privacy worked in mental health tech. Every evening, I'd sit in my bedroom, headphones on, laptop glowing, line after line of code scrolling past. No one came in to ask how it was going. No one thought to check if I was building something. They just assumed I was doing homework again, like I always had. I told Maya one night over tea. She had just come back from a failed job interview and was spiraling about her resume. I made her some chamomile, sat down with her on the back porch, and tried to lift her mood. I shared my app idea, not the business side, just the heart of it. I told her about the struggles people face accessing mental health support, how AI could offer a scalable solution, and how I wanted to build a platform that actually listened and responded empathetically. She listened, or at least, I thought she did. She asked smart questions, took mental notes. I remember feeling grateful in that moment, like maybe this was the beginning of something better between us. A collaboration, a truce, a real sisterhood. Looking back, I should have noticed the way she kept circling back to names and branding. "What are you calling it again?" she asked. "Light Mind," I replied, smiling. "It sounds soft but bright, like a light in a dark place." She nodded thoughtfully. "That's honestly kind of brilliant." At the time, I took it as a compliment. A month later, when I showed her some of my sketches and user flows, she acted impressed. She even said, "You've always been the genius one in this family, Tessa." I nearly cried. I didn't know that praise was just bait, that she was gathering information, not sharing pride. Meanwhile, I kept building, quietly. I had just finished a basic prototype when things started to shift. Maya stopped asking questions. She started avoiding me, spending more time out of the house. Then one day, she asked to borrow my laptop just to email her resume while hers was getting fixed. That was when she must have seen the files, the pitch deck, the business plan. I didn't password lock them. Why would I? She was my sister. That's what made it so brutal. This wasn't some stranger stealing a business idea. This was the person I trusted most, with my fears and hopes. The one I had tried to protect from her own failures. The one I shared my most vulnerable creation with. And when she pitched it as her own, smiling in our living room, watching them all cheer, it wasn't just betrayal. It was a knife to everything I had ever worked for, everything I had built in silence, everything I had done to prove, to myself, if not to them, that I was more than just Maya's quiet little sister. They didn't see the long nights. They didn't see the tears I wiped on my sleeve when the code wouldn't run. But Maya saw, and she took it anyway. Growing up in the Rowan household, there were two kinds of accomplishments: loud and visible, or invisible and unimportant. Maya was the queen of loud and visible. She could mess up an entire semester and still come out with applause for pulling through. She changed majors 3 times, dropped 2 internships, and failed an online course. Yet my parents still managed to throw her a graduation party, complete with a backyard banner that read, "Our star is just getting started." I, on the other hand, quietly graduated early, with honors. No banner, just a "That's nice, honey," and a half-hearted smile. It wasn't just favoritism. It was a pattern. Maya's wins, however small, were magnified. My wins, no matter how big, were filtered through a lens of silence. When I made it to the final round of a national coding competition, I told my mom, hoping maybe just this once she'd be proud. She glanced up from her phone and said, "Those are computer games, right?" She didn't mean to be dismissive, I think. She just didn't understand me. None of them did. At the dinner table, conversation rotated around Maya's social life, her outfits, her dating drama, her networking events, which usually meant some influencer brunch or product launch. When I tried to chime in about something I was building, someone would change the subject. Or worse, Maya would say, "Not now, Tess, we're not trying to fall asleep." She always made it sound like a joke, but jokes only land when people think they're true. So I stopped talking. I stopped sharing my work, my ideas, my excitement. I became the quiet one. The helper. The girl in the corner of the room with her laptop open and headphones on while the rest of the family took selfies and laughed around the TV. Even my extended family bought into the narrative. At Thanksgiving, my aunt asked, "So, are you still doing that tech stuff, or are you going to find a real job soon?" Maya laughed like it was a roast at my expense. I smiled politely, biting the inside of my cheek until it hurt. They didn't see the contracts I was helping draft for a freelance client. They didn't see the praise I got in online forums from real developers. They didn't know that I had already soft-launched a demo to a few beta users and gotten incredible feedback. To them, I was just the backup daughter, the one who didn't need attention because she had it all figured out. But that's the thing about being underestimated. Eventually, you learn to stop expecting validation from the people around you and start building validation of your own. I learned to celebrate my own small wins in silence. A bug fixed, a prototype launched, a stranger's message saying, "This could really help someone like me." I stopped waiting for them to notice. Still, a part of me, deep down, hoped they would. I wasn't jealous of Maya's spotlight. I just wanted a little warmth for myself, a little space to breathe, to be seen, to be heard. The worst part? I genuinely wanted to believe Maya could change. I thought maybe, as we got older, we'd become allies instead of opposites. Maybe she'd see that my success didn't threaten hers, that we could both be proud of each other. That's why I shared my app with her. That's why I let my guard down. I thought I was being a good sister. I thought she'd cheer for me the way I used to cheer for her, even when she didn't deserve it. Instead, she used that open door as an invitation to walk all over me. And my family let her. Not because they were cruel, but because they had already decided who I was. The quiet one, the smart one who didn't need the applause, the one who would forgive and move on. They had no idea that beneath my silence was someone watching, someone learning, someone building. They had no idea the girl in the corner had been underestimated for the last time. A few weeks before Maya's announcement, I thought something had finally shifted between us. We were both home for a long weekend. I had been working remotely and using the time to perfect my app's backend, and Maya had just left another consulting job she said didn't match her vision. One evening, I was coding at the dining table while she scrolled through Instagram on the couch. Out of nowhere, she asked, "Hey, what's that thing you've been building again? That mental health app?" I looked up, startled, unsure if she was mocking me or genuinely curious. Her tone was light, uncharacteristically so. "Yeah," I said cautiously. "Light Mind. It's basically an AI-driven companion app for mental wellness. It learns your emotional patterns and suggests support tools, reflection prompts, or grounding techniques in real time." Maya sat up straighter. "That actually sounds kind of amazing." I blinked. "Thanks." She walked over and peeked at my screen. For a second, I saw a flicker of something unfamiliar in her. Genuine interest. She asked questions. Good ones. Like how I planned to build traction, what my user base looked like, how I'd handle privacy compliance. I was stunned. Not only because she cared, but because she actually understood some of what I said. Then she said it. "We should pitch this to Mom and Dad. You know, show them what you've been working on. It's really good, Tessa. Like, investor-level good." I felt the words like sunlight on skin, warm, surprising, almost too good to trust. Still, I nodded. I wanted it. I wanted the support, the family recognition, the simple joy of feeling seen. After all the dinners where I sat silent while everyone celebrated Maya's half-baked ideas, the idea of standing beside her to show something I built with my own hands, it gave me hope. Maybe this was a turning point. Maybe she was finally treating me like a partner. That weekend, we spent a few hours going through my pitch deck together. I walked her through the name origin, how Light Mind wasn't just branding, but a symbol of clarity in emotional fog. I even showed her early user feedback from beta testers I'd quietly recruited through Reddit mental health groups. She nodded thoughtfully and said, "You're seriously sitting on a gold mine." When she suggested doing a joint pitch at our cousin's birthday gathering the next week, I hesitated. You mean like, just tell them? I asked. She smiled. Come on. When have they ever paid attention to me talking about anything serious? If I open with it, they'll listen. And then you come in with the real stuff, the brains. We're a great team. I remember the way that word landed. Team. I didn't realize until later that it wasn't an invitation. It was camouflage. So I spent the week preparing. I polished my pitch deck, cleaned up my code base, practiced how to explain technical concepts in ways our parents would understand. I imagined how the moment would feel, standing beside Maya, for once not behind her, but beside her, as equals. The day of the party, I brought my laptop, a printed version of the pitch deck, and a faint but growing sense of pride. My hands trembled with a mix of anxiety and anticipation. Maya arrived an hour late. She was dressed like she was walking into a press conference. Power blazer, sleek heels, and a fresh manicure. As people gathered, she cleared her throat dramatically and said, "Everyone, I have something to share." I stood up, expecting her to glance at me, to motion me over, to say something like, "Tessa and I," but she didn't. She started talking, alone. And as she pitched her new app, using my name, my concept, and even my phrasing, the room burst into applause like it was some movie finale. My mom looked at her like she'd never been more proud. My dad clapped and said, "That's our girl." I stood in silence. My mouth was dry. My heart was thudding in my chest, each beat landing like a slap. She didn't forget me. She erased me. And in that moment, the hope I had held, so tender, so fragile, shattered completely. I wanted to believe it was a misunderstanding, even after she took the stage and introduced my app as if it were hers. Even after the family clapped and praised her, I tried to convince myself she must have meant to mention me, that maybe she just forgot, that maybe she was nervous and misspoke and I'd hear my name in the next sentence, but it never came. She ran through the app's features like she was reading from my notes. She used the same words I used: responsive emotional mapping, behavioral check-ins, AI-driven wellness tools. I knew those phrases because I wrote them. She didn't even bother to change them. I had them in drafts on my laptop, in slides I had shown her during our so-called prep sessions. Still, I held on to the smallest thread of hope. After the party, I caught up to her in the hallway while everyone else migrated toward the kitchen for cake. My voice was low, controlled. "Maya, what was that?" She didn't flinch. She didn't act confused or surprised. She just turned to me and said, "What do you mean?" "That was my app," I said. "You didn't mention me. At all." Maya let out a light laugh, the kind that tries to make you feel like you're overreacting. "Tess, calm down. I told them the idea. They don't need to know every little detail right now." "You said you were building it," I said. "You said it was yours." She crossed her arms. "You're not going to get anywhere with that thing anyway. You're brilliant, sure, but you're not visible. You don't know how to sell yourself. I do. I can get it in front of people." I just stared at her. She didn't even try to deny it. She just laid it out like it was business, like I was a supplier and she was the face of the brand. "You weren't even going to tell me?" I asked, my voice breaking. She rolled her eyes. "You want credit? Fine. When it goes big, I'll say it was inspired by my sister. Happy?" And just like that, she walked away. I stood frozen in the hallway, her perfume still lingering in the air, her words cutting sharper than I expected. Inspired by my sister, like I was a footnote in my own life. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying every moment in my head, how I had trusted her, how I had opened my files and explained my process, how I had believed her when she said we'd do it together. I went back to my room and opened my laptop. I checked my folders. Several were recently opened. Files I hadn't touched in weeks had modified timestamps, my design prototypes, my user personas, even my developer notes. She'd gone through them, copied them. That's when the final confirmation hit me. I searched her name online. On a hunch, I looked up LinkedIn, and there it was, Maya Rowan, founder and CEO of LightMind. A brand new post, glossy headshot. Her in a white blazer, sitting in front of a bookshelf. Caption, excited to launch something close to my heart. Mental health is deeply personal to me, and I can't wait to share what we've built. We? There was no we. She listed the features, my features. She used my pitch, word for word. That post had over 500 likes, dozens of comments. Proud of you. Girl boss energy. Changing the world, one download at a time. I slammed my laptop shut. For a long time, I just sat there in the dark, tears burning behind my eyes, fists clenched at my sides. This wasn't just an idea. This was my life. I had spent months sketching every flow, writing every line of back-end logic, testing it on friends, improving it based on feedback. I didn't just build a product. I built a solution for something I had personally lived through. And she stole it. In one swipe, she took my vision, my voice, my work, and rebranded it with her smile. What made it worse? They believed her. My parents, my cousins, my aunts and uncles, no one questioned it. No one asked where she got the idea. No one even looked at me. It was like I had been erased. That was the moment I stopped hoping they'd see me. That was the moment something hardened inside me. I wasn't going to fight her with words. I was going to outbuild her. I was going to take everything I had built and make it impossible to ignore. Not for them, for me. I didn't leave my room for 2 days after I saw Maya's post. I didn't answer texts, didn't open emails, didn't even respond when my mom knocked on the door and said, "You're being dramatic again, Tessa." I just laid there, wrapped in my hoodie, staring at the ceiling, as if the cracks in the paint could give me answers. I wasn't just heartbroken. I felt erased. The kind of hurt that sits in your chest and makes your limbs heavy. Like you're underwater. Like you're watching the world move above you, but you can't reach it. That's what it felt like. And worse than the betrayal itself was the silence that followed. Not a single person in the family reached out to ask if I was okay. Not one of them questioned Maya's story. They were too busy commenting on her post, resharing it with captions like, "So proud of my niece," or "Our girl is changing the world." I watched every like, every heart emoji, every "you're amazing" roll in like waves meant to drown me. I hated how much it hurt. I hated that it was working. I wanted to scream at them all, show them the original files, the GitHub history, the prototypes I had emailed to myself months before. I wanted to send a mass text that said, "She didn't even know what an API was until I explained it." But I didn't, because somewhere deep inside, I believed it wouldn't matter. Maya had the charm, the presence, the natural spotlight. I had code and conviction, and in this family, that never seemed to be enough. I started spiraling, not just emotionally, but creatively. I couldn't look at my laptop. Every time I did, I saw her face next to my idea. It felt like every keystroke I had ever written was contaminated now, like I'd never be able to untangle my work from her theft. On the third night, I sat on the edge of my bed with my hands in my lap, staring at the floor like it had betrayed me too. I hadn't eaten. I hadn't showered. My phone was buzzing in the corner of the room, but I ignored it until I saw a name flash across the screen. Jules, the one person who never treated me like an afterthought. I picked up, barely whispering, "Hey." She didn't waste time. "You okay?" I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. No, not even close. Jules knew about the app. I had sent her demos months ago. She had even helped test the early build. So when I told her what Maya did, I didn't have to explain much. There was a long silence on the line. Then she said, "That's disgusting. But you know what? It's not over." I laughed bitterly. "Feels like it is." "Why? Because she copied you?" "No, because everyone believes her." Jules paused. Let them. That stopped me. She went on. Let them believe her, for now, because here's what she can't fake. She doesn't have your skill. She can steal your words, your branding, even your pitch, but she doesn't have your brain, or your work ethic, or your heart. I felt something stir. Small, but there. She's got attention, Jules said. You've got talent. That's the kind of difference you don't see until it matters. That was the first time in days I felt anything close to clarity. After we hung up, I didn't sleep. I just sat there in the dark, thinking. She was right. Maya could copy what I had already made, but she didn't understand how it worked. She couldn't build what came next. She didn't know the vision that lived in my head. The updates I had planned, the partnerships I had been dreaming about, the second phase of the project that would take it from an app to a real movement. And if I gave up now, she'd win. Not just the credit, but the future I had spent a year working toward. I looked over at my laptop. It was still closed, the charging light pulsing like a heartbeat. I got up, walked to the desk, opened it, and I started working. Not for her, not for my family, for me. Because if they weren't going to see me when I was silent, I was going to make damn sure they saw me when I finally spoke. And I would speak in code, in launches, in headlines, in milestones. This wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something only I could build. That next morning I woke up before the sun. Not because I had slept well, because I hadn't, but for the first time in days, my body didn't feel like dead weight. There was still a sharp ache in my chest, but beneath it was something new. Something like fire. I knew I couldn't do this alone. So I called Jules again. Do you still have that contact? I asked. She didn't even need to ask who I meant. You mean Blake? Yeah, him. Jules had done a marketing internship at a small tech incubator downtown after college. It didn't pay much, but she loved the environment. There was one investor she always mentioned, Mr. Blake. He was a former startup founder who'd sold a productivity platform for $90 million in his 30s, then pivoted to mentoring early-stage developers. Jules said he didn't like people who talked big. He liked people who worked quietly and let their products speak for them. I'll text him right now, she said. Just send me a fresh demo. The panic returned for a second. My original app design, the one Maya had copied, felt tainted. But I had already started rewriting everything. I needed to show something that was mine and only mine. So I stayed in my seat for the next 12 hours, coding nonstop. I renamed the project, rebuilt the interface, even changed the core user journey. By 3 a.m., I had a rough but working version of a new app, Mind Nest. I sent it to Jules. An hour later, she messaged me. He's interested, wants to meet. Can you come tomorrow? The next day, I took the bus to a co-working space downtown. My hands were shaking the entire ride. I hadn't pitched anything in person since college. I wore a simple black turtleneck and jeans. Nothing flashy, nothing that tried too hard. I didn't have the charisma Maya did, but I had my product. I had my truth. Mr. Blake met me in a glass-walled meeting room. He was in his 40s, casual in a flannel shirt and sneakers. His eyes were sharp, but not unkind. "Show me what you've got," he said. So I did. I walked him through MindNest, how it learned from user behavior, how it adapted based on voice inputs or journaling habits, how it sent personalized nudges based on emotional spikes. I showed him a basic dashboard for therapists, a private data system that made sure nothing left the app without full encryption. It wasn't perfect, but it was mine, and it worked. When I finished, he sat back and asked one question. "What made you build this?" I hesitated. Then I told him. About burnout. About how hard it had been to find help when I needed it. About feeling invisible in my own family. About Maya. I expected him to cut the meeting short, maybe offer polite advice. But he didn't. He leaned forward, steepling his fingers. "Do you want to build this quietly?" he asked. "Or do you want to win?" I stared at him, caught off guard. "Because if you want to win," he continued, "you're going to need more than code. You'll need a plan, a brand, a story people can believe in. But lucky for you, your story is real." I nodded, feeling something shift inside me. He handed me a card. I'll connect you with two people. One's a designer, the other's in fundraising. I'll handle legal. But I want to see weekly builds, and I don't fund talkers, so don't waste my time. I won't, I said, barely above a whisper. Good, he replied, standing up. Let's build something your sister can't copy. That was the moment everything changed. Until then, I had been fighting for recognition, for fairness, for validation. But Blake didn't see me as a victim. He saw me as a builder, a founder, a competitor. And for the first time in my life, someone who mattered believed I could win. I walked out of that office with his business card in my pocket and an entire strategy in my head. I didn't need Maya's approval. I didn't need my parents to clap. I had something better. A reason to finish what I started. And someone who was finally ready to bet on me. Not the version my family ignored, but the version that had always been quietly building. From the outside, nothing seemed different. To my family, I was still just Tessa, sitting quietly at the dining table, hoodie up, typing on my laptop, declining dinner invitations, skipping casual conversations. My mom occasionally peeked into my room and rolled her eyes. "Still with the computer?" she'd say, as if I were wasting time on video games. My dad asked once if I had considered just helping Maya with her app, so I wouldn't fall behind. I didn't respond. They had no idea I was building a machine behind that closed door. MindNest wasn't just a new version of LightMind. It was everything I wanted LightMind to be, but didn't have the resources for. Until now. With Mr. Blake backing me and Jules by my side, I finally had the room to think bigger. I redesigned the core engine to use adaptive mood detection based on journaling patterns and voice tone, something Maya wouldn't have a clue how to replicate. I sketched out a premium tier for therapists and clinics. I sourced data scientists through Jules' network who helped improve response logic. I was no longer a solo coder. I was quietly building a startup. We rented a tiny workspace downtown, just a 4-person office with flickering lights and questionable air conditioning, but it felt like a war room. I kept my name off the company website for now. No posts, no press, just progress. Jules took over brand design. She created the logo, soft, modern, calming, a gentle bird nested in a speech bubble. We settled on the tagline, "A softer way to be heard." Every morning, I woke up before the sun, took the early train into the city, and returned after dark. I stopped checking Maya's social media. Her posts still popped up occasionally. "Exciting news coming soon," or "behind the scenes of our big launch." She posted screenshots of mock-ups that looked suspiciously like my old designs. But I didn't care anymore. She was preparing a show. I was preparing a product. The difference would reveal itself in time. At night, I watched her from the hallway, sitting with our parents, sharing laughs, scrolling through comments on her phone. She looked like she had everything: confidence, charm, momentum. But I had something else. I had code that worked. I had real feedback from real users. I had results. 3 weeks into development, we did a closed beta. Jules had lined up 50 early testers, college students, part-time employees, and single parents, all people who'd previously struggled with traditional therapy options. The feedback poured in fast. I love how it doesn't judge me. It actually remembers what I said last week. That matters. This is the first thing that made me feel seen. I printed those comments and taped them above my monitor. I didn't care about likes, I cared about this. This was the reason I started building in the first place. Not for credit or competition, but because I knew what it was like to feel invisible. I wanted to build something that made people feel the opposite. Every part of MindNest was redesigned with intention. No trackers, no ads, end-to-end encryption for every user log. I partnered with a nonprofit to offer free access to college students with proof of financial hardship. I added guided breathing exercises with voiceovers by real therapists. And with Blake's help, we began negotiating with a major telehealth platform for integration. Meanwhile, Maya was still teasing her upcoming launch on Instagram. "Building something big," her captions read. But behind the glittery photos and vague promises, she didn't have anything to show. She had copied what I had, but I was building what came next. The best part? She didn't know. No one in my family did. They thought I was sulking, retreating into my usual tech bubble. Maya once walked past my room and whispered sarcastically, "You should get out more." I didn't reply, because I wasn't hiding. I was working. And soon, the difference between us would be impossible to ignore, because when you build in silence long enough, the reveal makes all the noise. It's almost funny how confidently people underestimate you when they think you've disappeared. As the weeks passed, Maya only grew louder, more smug, more animated, more sure of her place on the imaginary pedestal our family had built for her. She was everywhere in our house. In the kitchen bragging about an upcoming investor dinner, in the living room casually dropping words like UI, UX, and early traction, though I knew she had no clue what they actually meant. I had to walk away once when she said, "We're almost done coding the homepage." Maya couldn't even describe the difference between front-end and back-end development. But no one questioned her. Mom would beam across the table. "I'm so proud of you, sweetie. Finally, someone in this house is using their degree for something real." Dad nodded. This could really put our family on the map. I was sitting 3 chairs away, eating the same dinner, breathing the same air, and still invisible. They didn't ask what I was working on, not once. To them, I was still between things, still trying to figure it out. My silence meant nothing was happening. That's how little they thought of me. And honestly, that worked to my advantage. Let them look away, because while they laughed and celebrated Maya's fake milestones, I was securing real ones. My Nest had reached over 500 beta users with a 74% retention rate. We were onboarding 3 new therapists into our clinical advisory panel. Blake had connected us with a strategic partner to start negotiations with a wellness platform that had over 100,000 active users. Our prototype had already passed security audits. But back at home, none of it existed to them. Maya was in full campaign mode. She started printing mock posters with her face next to a fake launch date. She recorded TikToks pretending to work late in front of staged monitors showing Canva slides. I saw her film one where she typed random characters into a Google Doc and called it the algorithm. I had to bite my tongue so hard it almost bled. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't even jealous. I was amused, because she had built a parade float with nothing underneath it, and she thought no one could see the wheels wobbling beneath the paint. One night, I overheard her talking to our mom in the kitchen. I was sitting at the stairwell just above them. "I think I might be on local news soon," she said. "Some friend of a friend wants to interview female founders, and they said I have the look." Mom clapped like she'd just heard Maya had cured cancer. "That's amazing, baby. Just don't forget us little people when you're famous." I closed my eyes and exhaled slowly. They were so blind. Not just to the truth, but to how hollow Maya's entire show was. She'd built her startup like a theater set, convincing from the front, empty from the back. The more attention she got, the more reckless she became. She started hinting at launch dates she hadn't prepared for. She posted screenshots of fake dashboards. She even teased a paid subscription model, though she didn't have an actual working app. People began commenting on her posts with questions. When could they download it? Why weren't there any demos yet? She always responded with, "Coming soon, just finalizing some back-end stuff." Back-end stuff. Right. The cracks were forming, but she was too drunk on applause to notice. At dinner one night, Dad said, "Your sister's really going places, huh?" I didn't respond, just nodded and kept chewing. He continued, "You could learn a thing or two from her." I nearly laughed. I wanted to say, "You mean how to plagiarize someone else's work and smile for the camera?" But I didn't, because I knew something none of them did. The world would learn the truth, not from me yelling it, but from the moment they turned on their TVs and saw the girl they ignored standing on the other side of the screen, not in Maya's shadow, but on her own stage. I didn't need to defend myself anymore. I just needed to wait. Because soon, Maya would run out of lies, and I'd still be standing with everything she thought she stole, but better, smarter, and mine. It started with a phone call I almost didn't answer. I was sitting on the office floor, eating cold takeout after a 14-hour day of debugging a bug that refused to die, when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Normally, I would have ignored it. But something in me, maybe intuition, maybe exhaustion, made me swipe accept. "Hi, is this Tessa Rowan?" a woman's voice asked, polite but energized. "Speaking," I said, wiping soy sauce off my sleeve. "This is Kelsey Trent from WCN News. We're running a special tech segment next week called The Brains Behind the Breakthroughs, featuring young founders in mental health innovation. Your name came up twice. Would you be willing to do an interview?" I blinked. "Wait, what? My name came up?" I asked, trying to sound professional and not completely stunned. "Yes," she said. "One of your beta users forwarded your app to our team, and then again through a tech investor's newsletter. You're making real waves, Ms. Rowan. The retention numbers on MindNest alone are making noise. Would you be available for a pre-recorded segment this Friday?" "Yes," I said, far too fast. Then I cleared my throat. Yes, absolutely." We scheduled the interview. Jules nearly screamed when I told her. Blake gave a rare, satisfied smile and said, "Time to stop being anonymous." The next few days moved in fast forward. We rushed a visual upgrade to the UI, so the app looked even more polished for the demo shots. Jules coached me on speaking points, how to simplify my language without dumbing it down, how to answer questions like a founder, not just a coder. I practiced how to tell my story without mentioning Maya, without sounding bitter, without making it personal. This wasn't about revenge. This was about truth. The taping day arrived at a downtown studio, and I walked in wearing a navy blazer Jules had practically forced me to buy. "You need to look like a $1 million founder," she said. My hands were sweating. My stomach was doing flips. But once I sat under the lights and they started recording, something strange happened. I found my voice. The questions weren't hard, because every answer was real. I talked about burnout, about the need for accessible, stigma-free tools, about building something for people like me, people who didn't want to wait months for a therapist or didn't feel safe sharing everything with a stranger. I walked them through the app's features. They played B-roll of our workspace, clips of the team, screen recordings of the user flow. They even pulled a quote from one of our earliest users. "This app saved me during a panic attack. I didn't know I needed this until it was there." I almost teared up reading it again. When the interview ended, the producer came over and said, "That was powerful. You're going to help a lot of people." I walked out into the sunlight, feeling taller than I ever had in my life. But the real moment? That came a week later. Maya invited the whole family over for a private watch party. She told everyone she was going to be featured in a tech segment on local news. "WCN reached out to me for a spotlight," she said, smiling like a beauty queen at the Thanksgiving table. My mom baked a cake. My dad bought a new flat screen just for the occasion. I got the invite too, through a text that said, "Feel free to come, Tessa, no hard feelings." No hard feelings? I didn't respond, but I showed up. Not for her, for the moment. The living room was packed. Everyone had snacks. Maya posed with the remote before hitting play. The segment began, a sleek modern graphic. The brains behind the breakthroughs, young founders changing mental health. Maya adjusted her hair, waiting for her cue. Then the voiceover said, "Meet Tessa Rowan, 23 years old and already shaking up the mental health tech world." Silence. On screen, I appeared, confident, clear, walking through my office in that navy blazer. The camera showed my team, my logo, my app interface. My voice narrated, "I built MindNest because I needed something like it. Now, thousands of others do too." The room went dead quiet. My mom's hand froze over the popcorn bowl. My dad sat straighter. Maya's face didn't move, but her eyes did. Slowly, toward me. I met her gaze. She knew. They all knew. And the reveal had just begun. The air in the living room felt thick, almost heavy. You could have heard a pin drop, and I think even the popcorn my mom had been holding lost its crunch as it slowly slipped through her fingers onto the carpet. Everyone was staring at the screen, and the screen was all me. There I was, sitting in the studio with the WCN logo behind me, speaking confidently to the camera. I didn't sound nervous or small or unsure. I sounded like a woman who built something that mattered, who knew what she was doing, who had something no one could take. My goal, I said on screen, was never fame or money. I built Mind Nest because I needed a space where I could be honest with myself. I think a lot of people are walking around pretending they're fine when they're not. This app listens when no one else does. Then came the footage from our office. My team working, Jules sketching whiteboard concepts, a real product in action, real people, real impact. MindNest launched in beta 3 months ago and already has over 200 active users, the reporter's voice said. This week, the company secured a strategic partnership and a funding round valued at $18 million. Gasps. Not dramatic movie-style gasps. Real, small, involuntary ones. Like people trying to breathe and forget how lungs work. My dad turned his head toward me first. Slow, measured. His face was blank. No anger, no pride, just confusion. Like a man who realized the world had changed overnight and no one told him. My mom blinked at me like she was trying to solve a puzzle. "Tessa?" she said, barely audible. "That's your app?" I didn't flinch. "Yes." Her eyes darted back to the screen where the segment was still playing. There was a quote on the screen from a national tech blog. "Mind Nest is what every wellness app pretends to be." Maya still hadn't moved. She was staring at the TV like she could will it to change. Like maybe if she blinked hard enough, the logo would shift from Mind Nest to Light Mind, and she could still claw back some version of control. But it was gone. It was already over. She opened her mouth to say something, but nothing came out. I didn't gloat. I didn't make a speech. I didn't look around for applause. I just stood up, calmly walked over to the remote, and pressed pause. Silence. Then I looked at Maya. "Funny," I said. "You told me no one would ever take me seriously. You said I didn't have the voice for it. Guess someone heard me anyway." Her jaw twitched. This is what you were working on?" I nodded. "You said nothing," she muttered. "You sat there like someone who didn't need to explain herself to people who never listened." Dad leaned forward. "You're really the founder of this Mind Nest?" "I've been building it for over a year," I said, turning to him. "Before Maya ever asked me about my idea, before she ever took my files, before she ever stood in this room and pretended she built something." My mom tried to speak. "You never told us." "Why would I?" I cut in. "You made it clear who the family listens to." The room was still frozen, but something had shifted. They couldn't unsee what they saw. They couldn't unhear what was broadcasted across their living room on a major news segment. Maya wasn't the visionary. I was. I turned to walk out. I didn't need to stand there and explain further. Let them sit with it. Let them rewind the segment when I was gone. Let them finally look past the spotlight and see the girl who had been building in silence for years. As I reached the door, Maya finally said it. "But you didn't even tell me you were still working on it." I stopped, my hand on the doorknob. "You didn't ask." Then I walked out. And in that moment, I wasn't the overlooked daughter, or the quiet sister, or the girl in the corner of the room. I was the founder who turned betrayal into momentum. I was the one who let her work speak when words didn't matter anymore. The power had shifted, and this time it wasn't going back. Wing Hut. The silence I left behind in that living room wasn't just awkward. It was the kind of silence that crawls into the walls, that sticks to the floor, that doesn't leave for hours even after the people do. They didn't say much that night. No phone calls, no texts, just dead air. And I was okay with that, because I had learned something important. Their reaction wasn't mine to fix. But Maya? Maya didn't handle the silence well. The next morning, her Instagram was oddly quiet. No new posts, no launch countdowns, no glittery coffee shots with motivational captions, just stillness. That's how I knew the segment had hit her harder than she wanted anyone to know. She came into my room for the first time in months. She didn't knock. She stood at the doorway like she was waiting for a script to appear in her hands, like she still might find the right line to win the scene back. "You blindsided me," she said flatly. I didn't turn around. I was finishing a product review checklist. "I didn't owe you a warning." "You could have told me," she continued. "You could have said you were launching something." I spun my chair around, finally facing her. "You mean like how you told the entire family my app idea was yours? Like how you stole my files and never once mentioned my name?" She flinched. Just slightly, but I saw it. "I didn't think you'd actually build it," she said. There it was. The truth. Ugly and small. "I didn't think you had it in you." "That's always been your problem, Maya," I said quietly. "You think success is about looking like a winner. But I don't need a spotlight. I just needed time." She folded her arms, her voice defensive. "They were going to feature me next. I was talking to WCN. They reached out to me," I said, eyes steady. "They wanted someone who built something real." She looked away. That was the first time I saw her without the usual arrogance. She didn't look angry. She looked small. Like someone who had realized too late that the game had changed, and she wasn't holding any of the pieces anymore. Later that week, things started unraveling fast. Maya's fake launch date came and went. No app, no update. People began asking questions in the comments of her posts. "Hey, wasn't this supposed to drop Friday? Where's the app link? I saw someone else launched a version of this. Are you part of MindNest?" She tried damage control. She posted a statement claiming she was refining final touches and delaying launch to ensure a better experience. But it didn't work. People had seen the news. They had seen me. More importantly, they had seen proof. Within days, she started losing followers. People were tagging her in clips of my interview. Some were even calling her out. "Did you steal this idea? Because your version never launched." Yikes, this is shady. One of the tech blogs that had reshared her LinkedIn post removed the article quietly. Another issued a correction and replaced her feature with mine. The house changed too. My dad, who had never once asked about my work, suddenly started asking questions. Not the fake kind, but real ones, curious ones. "So, how do you build something like that? How long have you been working on this? Why didn't you tell us?" I gave him short answers. I wasn't rude, I just wasn't performing anymore. My mom brought me tea one afternoon, said nothing, just placed it on my desk like it was a peace offering. And Maya? She started disappearing. Less laughter in the house, fewer public declarations, no more look at me moments. I heard her crying once through the wall. Not loud, just a quiet, sharp kind of sob. The kind that comes when pride has nowhere left to go. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt free. For the first time, I wasn't walking around trying to be seen. I was seen. Not because I demanded it, because I earned it. I didn't need to take anything from Maya. Life handled that part on its own. She'd built her empire on borrowed bricks. When the truth came out, it collapsed under its own weight. And me? I was still building. Only now, no one could pretend not to see it. In the weeks after the interview aired, I noticed something strange. A calm I hadn't felt in years started to settle in my chest. Not pride, not even satisfaction. Just peace. It was the kind of peace that comes when you stop fighting for things that were never yours to carry. Approval, validation, applause. The kind that wraps around you not because you finally got what you wanted, but because you realized you never needed it in the first place. I was still waking up early, still pulling long hours, still working on feature rollouts and analytics. But now I wasn't doing it to prove anyone wrong. I was doing it because I loved the work. Because every new user who messaged us saying, "This helped me get through my day," reminded me of why I'd started building in the first place. Maya had stopped trying to control the narrative. There were no more social media stunts, no more speeches at family dinners, just silence. She avoided me around the house. The few times we crossed paths, she kept her head down, not out of shame maybe, but out of resignation. She finally understood that there was no catching up to something you never actually built. And for the first time, I didn't feel the urge to rub it in. I thought I would. For so long, I fantasized about a moment where I stood over her with proof in my hands, watching her fall apart, finally understanding what she'd done. But when the moment came, it didn't feel like a war won. It felt like a weight lifted. I didn't need revenge. I didn't want it. Because while Maya had spent weeks building a castle of mirrors, I had built something that couldn't be taken away. Something real. Something I could wake up to every morning with purpose and pride. I had spent so much of my life feeling like a shadow in someone else's spotlight. Always one step behind, always shrinking to make room. But now, for the first time, I wasn't in anyone's shadow. I had my own light, and it didn't flicker when no one else was watching. One evening, I sat outside on the back porch. It was quiet. A soft spring breeze brushed through the trees. My laptop was open, but I wasn't working. I was just reading through messages from users. There was one from a high school girl who said the app helped her sleep again. Another from a 40-year-old dad who said the journaling feature helped him talk to his kids. I smiled to myself. This was what I had built. And they didn't clap for it because of a last name. They didn't support it because of charm or popularity. They connected with it because it worked, because it was honest, because it mattered. That night, my dad came outside. He sat down next to me, slowly, like he wasn't sure if he was welcome there. He looked out into the dark yard for a moment before speaking. I watched that segment again, twice. I nodded but said nothing. I didn't know, he added. I kept my eyes on the screen. You didn't ask. He exhaled. You've always been smart. I guess I just didn't think you needed much. I looked at him. I didn't need much. I just needed to be seen. He didn't say anything after that. Just nodded. Maybe that was his way of apologizing. Maybe that was all he could give. And for once, it was enough. Because I didn't need a grand gesture anymore. I didn't need a banner with my name on it. I had my work, I had my peace, I had myself. And the version of me that once begged for their recognition no longer existed. She had grown, she had built, she had let go. It was a quiet Sunday afternoon when Maya knocked on my door. I was in the middle of cleaning my inbox, sorting through partnership inquiries and mental health advocacy invites. The kind of messages that just a few months ago I never imagined would land in my inbox, especially not with my name at the top of the thread. The knock was soft, hesitant. I didn't answer right away. I just sat there, watching the doorknob, unsure if I wanted to hear whatever she was about to say. Then her voice came, low and less sure of itself than I'd ever heard it. Tess, can I come in? I closed my laptop. Yeah. She stepped inside slowly, like someone walking into a room that didn't belong to them anymore. She didn't look like the Maya who usually floated into places, carrying herself like she owned the space. There was no smirk, no gloss, just plain jeans, a hoodie, no makeup, and tired eyes. She didn't sit until I nodded toward the chair. Then she lowered herself into it, like her bones were heavier than they'd been before. I saw your podcast interview, she said, picking at her sleeve. The one with the mental health founders panel. I nodded. Yeah. It went well. It did, she said quickly. You were really good, like you belonged there. I waited, unsure where this was going. I just, she sighed. I wanted to say I'm sorry. It didn't sound rehearsed. It didn't come wrapped in excuses or justifications. She didn't follow it with a but. Just those 3 words. Awkward, raw, uncertain. I knew what I was doing, she admitted, and I didn't care. I thought if I got ahead of you, if I could take it and run, no one would notice. They never noticed before, right? That last part felt honest, like she wasn't just talking about the app. She was talking about everything. Birthdays where I got socks and she got iPhones. Holidays where she got center stage and I stood behind the camera. I've been the favorite, she said, voice small. Even when I didn't earn it. I've known it, and I got addicted to it. I thought if I lost that, I'd be nothing. I stayed quiet, letting her say what she needed to. You didn't just build something better, she added. You built something real. People actually use it. You changed lives. I faked it, and I got caught. And you didn't even have to say anything. That's what really got me. There was a long pause between us. Then I spoke. I used to think the only way I'd feel better was if you apologized, if you said you were wrong. She looked up at me, waiting. But now I know I never needed that, I continued. Not really. I needed to prove to myself that I could do it anyway, and I did. Maya nodded slowly. I don't expect us to go back to how we were. I don't either. But maybe we can start going forward differently. It wasn't an instant fix. It wasn't sisters hugging and everything magically healing. It wasn't some scripted forgiveness arc tied with a bow. It was awkward, a little clumsy, but it was honest. And that was more than I'd ever gotten from her before. I stood and opened the door wider. You want tea? I asked. She blinked, like she wasn't sure if she'd heard right. Then she smiled. Not her performance smile, not her Instagram smile, just a small, tired, real one. Yeah, that sounds good. So we walked into the kitchen together. She didn't sit in her usual chair at the head of the table. She took the seat next to mine. We didn't talk much. I made tea. She added too much honey. We drank. And in that stillness, something shifted. Not everything, but something. We weren't best friends. We weren't sisters on a magazine cover. We were just 2 people trying to figure it out. And sometimes, that's enough. A month after that quiet cup of tea with Maya, I found myself standing on a small stage in Austin, Texas, facing 300 people who had gathered for the National Mental Health Innovators Summit. A soft amber spotlight warmed my shoulders while a sea of expectant faces, therapists, founders, college students, venture partners, looked up, waiting to hear how an introverted coder built something that mattered. I took a breath and glanced at the giant screen behind me. The MindNest logo pulsed gently like a heartbeat, steady, alive. Beneath it, in crisp white letters, the words, "A softer way to be heard." I remembered the first night I sketched that slogan on a sticky note, alone in my bedroom. I remembered feeling small and invisible, wondering if anyone would ever read it. Now it floated 50 feet tall above my head. I started to speak. Not hurried, not shaky, just clear. I talked about the power of a single idea pursued with relentless authenticity. I explained how listening, to ourselves, to data, to users, became the backbone of every design decision. I shared the story of MindNest's first user, a college freshman who had written, "This app is the one place I can tell the truth." I saw people in the audience wipe their eyes. I did too, but I kept going. Then I shifted to lessons learned. Talent grows in silence. The crowd nodded. Credibility is louder than charisma. Phones rose to capture that line. When someone underestimates you, build anyway. That one earned applause, sharp, wholehearted, echoing off the wood-paneled walls. At the end, I clicked to the final slide, a black screen with white text. You are never powerless when you own your story. The room went still. For 2 heartbeats, there was only silence. Then the applause came, rolling, rising, thunderous. Not polite, not obligatory, but real. People stood. Some whistled. Some shouted, "Yes!" as if something inside them had cracked open and found light. I smiled. Not a forced smile, not a look-at-me smile. A quiet, steady smile that came from knowing exactly who I was and what I had built. After the talk, a line of attendees curved around the stage. Investors asked about expansion. Therapists volunteered to pilot new modules. A high school teacher wanted to use MindNest in her classroom guidance program. Each conversation felt like a stitch, pulling me further into the fabric of something larger than myself. A movement toward honest mental wellness. When the crowd thinned, I stepped outside into the warm Texas evening. Downtown lights glittered, and the scent of barbecue drifted through the air. I pulled out my phone and opened my family group chat. There, near the top, was a new message from Maya. Maya, watching your keynote live stream. You were brilliant, truly proud of you. No qualifiers, no hidden agenda, just 7 words and a period. It felt like a small stone set gently on a riverbed, enough weight to stay, light enough to let the water keep moving. I typed back, me. Thank you. Means a lot. Then I slipped the phone into my pocket and inhaled the night. Brisk, alive, unfiltered. I wasn't waiting for their applause anymore, but it no longer felt foreign when it came. A rideshare pulled up. The driver, a middle-aged woman with soft eyes, recognized me from the summit badge still hanging around my neck. "You're the MindNest girl," she said, smiling in the rearview mirror. "My daughter downloaded your app. She sleeps better now." I felt my throat tighten. In the good way, the way that reminds you a heart still beats under all that ambition. "Thank you for telling me," I managed. She flicked on the meter. "Changing lives, huh? That must feel amazing." "It does," I said quietly. As the car merged onto the highway, city lights streaked past. In their reflection on the window, I saw myself. Not the quiet sister, not the backup daughter, but a founder, a builder, a woman who turned silence into a platform that spoke for thousands. Somewhere behind those lights, my family was watching. Maybe they were gathered around that same living room TV, or maybe they were each in their own spaces, piecing together a new understanding of who I had become. I hoped Maya was sketching something new, something authentic and hers. I hoped my parents were learning that pride grows best where belief is first planted. But whether they learned or not no longer defined me. I had my work. I had my peace. I had a future shaped by my own hands. The driver's radio played a gentle acoustic song about finding home inside yourself. I leaned back, closed my eyes, and let the melody drift through the cabin. For the first time in as long as I could remember, everything felt quiet, but not empty. It was the calm of a chapter completed, the hush before the next line of code, the pause when the lights dim just before a new scene rises. And in that quiet, I smiled, because the story I was writing now was entirely my own,